Also, why did nobody say anything?
I think movements.
Okay. Hold on. Okay, cool. There we go.
And that is what happens in episode 3 before the storm.
So no, this is what happens when you restart your computer after an update right before you have to go live. Welcome to See How the Sausage is Made, everybody. So I'm just going to go do the whole intro over again since that was on camera. Welcome to our Life is Strange Before the Storm Q&A spoiler stream. I'm joined in studio by Chris from Deck 9 Games.
Hi, everybody.
And Ashley Burch, voice actress of Chloe in the series.
Hello again.
So we were talking about how Chris and I have gotten to do several panels together over the summer for this awesome title, and how Ashley and I missed each other at the Game Awards, and we're both runners-up, sadly.
Winners in our hearts.
Yes, and joined,
Thanks,
of course,
guys.
Us too.
by the blonde nerd, Brittany Brownbacher.
Yeah,
over
thanks for
there.
that intro, Andrea. Just a few
You
minutes
know
late.
what? I gave you such a beautiful intro the first time that I forgot about it.
It was moving.
Great. Thank
so
you.
just for people in the chat who are watching, we will not be giving spoilers for future content because that would be pretty bad, right? We don't want to do that to anybody. But we will be talking about things that happened in the first 2 episodes of Before the Storm and potentially things that happened in the first season of Life is Strange. So we asked you guys to send us in a bunch of questions, which I'm going to pull up here. But Chris, can you remind us, when is episode 3 coming out again?
Episode 3 is out December 20th, so
That's-
just next week.
That's so soon, you guys.
Prepare yourself.
There was part of me that was a little scared that we weren't going to get the 3rd episode before the end of the
Before the
year,
end
and
of
you were
the
going to
year.
make us wait to find out what happens. But
They would not be that mean to us.
this is going to be great. But it does mean for all of our What's Good fans watching that we won't be able to do our 3rd spoiler cast until January, because we want to give people, enough time to play it and not feel like they have to be rushed. So, and if you missed our first 2 spoiler casts for episode 1 and episode 2 from Before the Storm, I highly recommend you check them out.
Oh, yeah.
But Britt, do you have the questions up over there?
I have the questions up over here.
So I'm thinking we should probably just get started, and we'll be watching the chat for some questions too if you guys have them. Why don't you maybe pick one? I'm going to go click a button over there, and I'll be right back.
All right, I got you. Our first question comes from David, and I'm really bad at pronouncing names, so don't hate me. Koenig? For Deck 9, as someone who hasn't been a teenager in forever, I'm curious about how the writers and artists are able to tap into that world. Do you draw from personal experience from having been teenagers? Do you actually study and research today's youth? How do you do it?
Yeah, well, in many ways, all of the above. I mean, we have an amazing writing team, and they're very diverse group. Some of them, in fact, were teenage girls not that long ago, so they can draw on some recent experience. But I think also being a teenager is a universal experience, and it really, something you kind of always carry with you, your experiences from being a teenager. So I think all of us can look back on that. And then they do some research as well, the writers do, into, contemporary teens and things like that as well. So we come at it from a lot of different angles.
What was it like for you, Ashley, to relive these teenage years? Was it like a little, real?
Did you have stirrings?
Did you have stirrings?
Stirrings. I've never heard that before. That's excellent. Yes, so many stirrings. That's all it was. Yeah, I mean, it was getting to play Chloe in the first season of Life is Strange in particular. I think I got to excise some teen anger maybe that I hadn't actually ever processed. So it was actually kind of sort of a healing and sort of enriching experience in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I really loved about both games was just how accurate it felt. As the 3 of us have once experienced being a teenage girl. Sorry, Chris. I remember some of the writing specifically in some of the scenes being it just I've been there. I had that moment. I had that particularly the scene on the train in episode 1, I think it was at the end of episode 1, where they were just talking about stuff, and I was I remember vividly having a very similar moment with a girlfriend of mine in high school, and just taking me back there. I don't know if I want to go back there, but I do have some fond memories.
No, and it is kind of a cathartic game to play, as you were saying, Ashley. You get rid of that teenage angst because I was Max and I had a friend who was Chloe. So now that I'm an adult and mature, right? I feel like I'm
As
able
she says with that weird
surrounded by
Muppet voice.
surrounded by toys. I feel like I was able to handle those similar situations, but through the lens of an adult. So props. I feel like I got my angst out.
So another question that we have that came in from Alex Gonzalez. Was Ashley nervous for her first voice role, and did her YouTube channel help with her confidence? Of course, a lot of people in the chat, we see you saying, "Hey Ash, what you playing?" Of course, I know that from its days on game trailers way back in the day.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that have never seen that show.
Yeah, it's wild. I was thinking about it recently that it's almost been 10 years.
Wait, really?
Yeah, we've almost been making Hash for 10 years, which is really
That's
wild.
nuts.
Yeah, it's really wild. Yes, I was definitely nervous. My first official voice acting gig was Tiny Tina, which is a hell of a first gig to have.
Could not have been your first.
It was my
what?
first.
You
yeah.
slayed it. It was so
thank
good.
You. Thank you. Yeah. It was my first one, and it helps that my brother was the writer and he was there with me.
Indeed.
But yeah, it took me a little while to get over my voice acting jitters. I mean, you can tell probably I speak pretty fast, and when I'm nervous, it's even faster. So if there are any parts where you're listening and you're like, Tiny Tina sounds like she's, just done a bump of cocaine or something, it's probably because I was nervous.
Jitters. That's cool.
On that note, we have a question from Mara Truman. Is it harder for Ashley to prepare for realistic roles like Chloe and Aloy, or bizarre roles like Tiny Tina?
I guess it just sort of depends, you know, like they use different parts of my brain almost. I mean, there's certain things that overlap, but Tina's so it's all id and all freewheeling, and you know, and there's definitely more emotional digging I had to do for Chloe and Aloy. So it's they're both enriching and challenging in different ways. I would say that I guess I get more. I could leave. I know, like, especially in like the last couple episodes of the first season of Life is Strange, Hannah and I were basically crying in the booth for like multiple takes. So that can, you know, get a little tired. You may want to take a nap or something after that. But but it's also like when I get to do those moments, it's really, you know, because it's nice too to feel like you're in games that are treating their story seriously and want to tell compelling storylines and have their actors go there, have their players go to emotional places. So it's always a positive thing.
Yeah, absolutely. This one maybe Chris can speak to. So this is from Michael Foti, and he asks, with this taking place before the first game, referring to Before the Storm, was there any difficulty writing the story and choices to follow up to one, or was it easier having these characters established?
Oh, well, of course, we were so privileged to be building on the foundation of these characters that Don't Nod had established in the first game and having a rich world to draw from. But we did very intentionally go back as far as we went back to give ourselves some space. We focused on a story that took place over just 3 days, 3 years before that first game, and we wanted a storyline that was self-contained within that time frame, give you some new revelations about who Rachel is and her family, and that let us tell a story that you didn't know the ending to, and we could still surprise you.
I mean, we haven't seen the ending yet of Before the Storm, but I'm anticipating a surprise. It's so interesting knowing what happens, obviously, in like Life is Strange, and how you're gonna get there from where we are now to there. It's like I'm kind of like a little angsty about it. Like I'm like, oh no, it's coming. I don't want it to happen.
There's definitely no way that it can't be a kind of bittersweet story, right?
Right.
Because we do know that the ultimate fates of these characters. To me, I feel like that adds a lot of kind of depth and emotionality to even kind of the best moments that we have with Chloe and Rachel in our story.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's interesting because we've had these spoiler casts and some of the ladies are actually sympathizing with Nathan Prescott. And I'm like, how could you? Like, knowing what he does. So, yeah, it's really interesting that, you know, you see a different side of him in Before the Storm.
One of our principles, and I think we got this from how Don't Nod handled their characters as well, is to make sure that we're not treating any characters as one-dimensional. As I think Samuel says in episode 2, nobody is just one thing. Right. And so I think that's true for Nathan, and we tried to show that side of him.
So conflicted. So many conflicting emotions.
Trevor Starkey wants to know, what's Ashley's favorite part of playing Chloe and her favorite part of writing for the character?
Oh, that's a hard one. I just love her. It's hard. I mean, I got so attached to Chloe in recording the first game. And I think it's because, you know, she's gone through so much, and she's, especially for someone her age, you know, she's lost her father. I want to say spoilers, but I guess we've already, but you know, she finds out that she's lost Rachel, and for a while she felt like she lost Max just for the distance, like lost their friendship. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of bitterness and resentment in her, but at the same time, she's always still trying, you know. When Max comes back, there's like a lot of snark there, but she's still willing to accept this person back into her life. Right. And at the end, I think there's a lot of bravery that she shows in the last episode, and the choice that you ultimately make, and that she's ready to die if that's what Max decides is the right choice. And so so I think it's interesting. I feel like she's so complex, and she's been through so much, and like to have to make that choice at such a young age is not fair and is heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. But I buy that she would do that, you know, like she has this really consistent emotional landscape that's really great, which is also her being such a rich character. I think, you know, it was so easy, I think, to and like you said, you know, going into Before the Storm, you could what's the phrase I'm looking for? Not backwards compatible. That's a gaming term. Reverse engineer. There it is. Reverse engineer. Who she would be before these things happen to her, and so yeah, she's such a fully fleshed out character that she's so easy to write for and to voice because she has her own life and landscape.
Speaking of that intense ending, we have a question from Jorge. What choice did Ashley make at the end of Life is Strange?
Some people think there's only one right choice.
Yep.
I will say I played the game with my friend.
Okay.
And I forced her to make the choice. And
so you didn't have to make the choice?
So I didn't have to, and she chose to save Chloe.
That's convenient. That's
I know.
convenient. You can blame it on somebody else.
Yeah, I blame it on Sarah. I do. Whenever I go to conventions, though, I ask people, and you can tell immediately from their reaction before they say, like, anyone that saved Arcadia Bay gets really uncomfortable. I'm like, I'm not offended. There are a lot of people there. It makes sense.
You're just shooting daggers, through your eyes. It's fine.
Well, there's a lot of debate, of course, around our studio and people on both sides of that
I was gonna ask
issue
you.
as well. So I'm a Arcadia Bay BAY.
I also say
guy,
I also saved the Bay.
and I understand the other perspective, even though you're all monsters. That's what you chose.
I mean, I like that they had their moment where they like rode off into the sunset, as the world burns like behind them. But I was like,
The people.
I was like, but there's so many people and she's just one person.
I know.
I mean, and I think the scene where, we have the flashback where Max has made the decision to save Chloe's dad, and then we go back in time and like what happens in that scene, like I think that to me, when she was ready to die there, I was like, then she's going to be ready to die in the final episode. So like to me, the decision was easy. I was like, she's already made that choice.
That was honestly a big
even
part
heard
of
of
it.
that, yeah.
That was a big part of it for me too. Is Chloe articulates why maybe she needs to she needs to go, and that made it a lot at least easier for me to make that choice.
You're like,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit, this is kind of a fun question from Sam Suvak at SK Suvak on Twitter, and he asked, Chloe's graffiti was always fantastic. Were there any cool graffiti ideas that didn't make it into the game, or maybe we'll see in episode 3? Also, what's everyone's favorite video game, and what do you think Chloe's would be? The favorite video game question is kind of a broad one, so we might have to like skip that one. But I want to hear about the graffiti.
That makes okay.
So yeah, great question about graffiti. I'm trying to think of any that we didn't put in. One of the interesting things, sort of on the practical development side with graffiti, was it was actually relatively cheap compared to other elements of the game for us to revise at the last minute, because a lot of it was just visual, a little bit of a time from our 2D artist.
Yeah.
So we would iterate on some a variety of ideas. So I do remember, this is maybe a little embarrassing, I remember a point where we realized we didn't have enough graffiti. We didn't have our full 10 in one of our episodes as we were getting it together. So we had to invent some sort of at the last minute.
Oh, man.
There are some fun ones coming up in episode 3, graffitiing in some unusual places. So I think people will enjoy what's in there.
Yeah, there was times when I kind of wanted to walk back through the world to try to find the graffiti that I'd made like earlier in the episode, and I feel like I need to do a second playthrough just so I can pick the other graffiti option in every single place.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
I feel like Chloe's favorite game. My immediate thought was Binding of Isaac for some reason.
Oh,
that's interesting.
That's a good choice.
And then I thought, well, maybe she'd be more of like an SNES, like Toe Jam, or no, Toe Jam and Earl wasn't SNES, was it? What was it?
I should have an
think
answer.
What
to
are
this
we, a
question.
video game podcast? Come on, Ashley.
But then I also thought that I was like, maybe she'd be into Toe Jam and Earl. But yeah, Binding of Isaac was my first immediate reaction.
I was thinking like Grand Theft Auto.
Or you know what I was thinking along those similar lines? Have you guys seen the Untitled Goose game?
Genesis, someone in the chat
That
says.
was
Genesis, thank you.
No.
talked about recently. So there's a indie game still in development, but this guy released some footage of a game where you play a goose and you just go around and cause chaos and havoc
I've
with
seen
the
this
farmer,
game.
just causing trouble everywhere. That seems like something Chloe would
That does
enjoy.
sound like
as
something she
much
would.
havoc as humanly possible. You got one over there,
I
Brett?
have one from Alex Gonzalez. Ashley, were you nervous for your first voice role? And did your YouTube channel help with your confidence?
We asked that question.
Did we?
Yes.
Oh, well,
She
where
said
have
yes,
I
of course
been?
it
I wasn't
was.
interesting enough for you to remember my answer.
Well, clearly. Well, there we go. Okay, well, I'll grab another one
Question
then.
so good, you asked it twice.
Okay, this comes from David. What are some of your favorite voice or mocap performances this year? You haven't answered that one.
Well, I have a feeling I know the answer to this question, but go ahead.
Like of my own work?
Yeah.
Of my own work.
Your own
okay.
work.
Aloy and Horizon. I mean, I think that's the only mocap work that I've done this year. So that's
That she could probably talk about.
Yeah.
Would be my guess.
So that's probably an easy one. But yeah, I love playing Aloy. And of course my being young Chloe in Farewell. Yeah, I've actually had a really fun year for voice acting. And I don't talk about this role as much, but I play Rey in Fortnite. And
I didn't know that.
yeah, and
That's
she's
awesome.
the writing on that game is so funny, and so I really love recording for that one too.
It's a game that I haven't gotten to spend enough time with because, as everyone in the chat watching knows, it's just been, and you guys know, it's been such a crowded fall for really
Yeah.
fantastic games and really giant games. It's not like a quick, 5 to 6 hour sit down. It's like, hey, do you have 50 hours for each of these games?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been really tough. But I do want to talk a little bit about episode 3. So I know, Chris, you guys have been showing a demo. We're going to take a look at it later. But is there anything you can tell us about what you guys have been showing?
We've been showing some moments from the beginning of the episode. Chloe and Rachel together, and kind of dealing with the big bombshell that was dropped at the end of episode 2. And Chloe really reaching out to Rachel. We can see a little bit more of Rachel's house, which is exciting. Places we haven't been yet.
Upstairs?
And-
Ooh.
Yeah, right?
And and there's a new dream sequence as well, as part of that sequence that is pretty
freaked me
powerful.
out so bad. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know what's gonna happen. And it's like, Alexa has these great theories that we're gonna talk about on the show later, but about how the Tempest weaves in and out. Is that are we gonna see some of those threads maybe come together in episode 3?
You'll definitely see some kind of residual effects. In fact, even in that dream of the Tempest, and I think Alexa's theories are really intriguing. I'm excited to talk some more about that.
So let's talk about Farewell. So when you guys first announced Before the Storm, we knew that there was going to be this like bonus episode, but we didn't kind of really know like what it was going to be about. I thought it was an interesting choice, kind of picking this time where it's like they're super young. Like young Chloe versus, where we see Chloe now. And then, of course, where Chloe was in season 1 of Life is Strange. How are we going to see maybe some of these doodles that have been in Chloe's book maybe played out somewhere? Maybe?
I think the artwork and the games they would play and kind of the role playing they would do, superheroes and
Pirates.
noir.
Pirates!
There might be a little bit of pirate action going on, just a tad. You'll definitely see a lot of that. And there's one of the things we emphasized in Farewell, I think, is exploring just all these artifacts of Chloe and Max's life together when they were kids. And so that's, I think, going to be a lot of fun and nostalgic and wistful.
Was it difficult for you, Ashley, as someone who performed this character, as someone who was like 18 going back to like a 14-year-old? Like, I mean, I am not a voice actor, so I don't know like how you like change or modify your voice or even your intonation or the way you speak. Was that like challenging for you, or were you like, nah, I got this?
Well, it's interesting because you have to consider that the Chloe that we see at 18 has gone through a lot of stuff.
Right.
And the Chloe in Farewell, Max hasn't even left for school yet, so her dad's still alive. So there is, a balance you have to strike between. There's a certain attitude that makes her Chloe, but then there's a certain like lightness and joyfulness that's there that's not present in like later iterations of Chloe because she hasn't had the shit kicked out of her yet. Yeah, so that was an interesting balance to try to strike. And she sounds a little bit younger.
It's hard because all of these things sound so happy, but at the same time, it tears your heart apart, right? Because it's like, oh, baby girl, go crawl in a closet and stay there. Poor thing.
So we have a question in the chat, and I'm not sure if you guys can answer it, but Zombo55 wants to know, speaking about Farewell, how long before the death of William does it start, like in the timeline of Life is Strange? Do we know?
I don't feel like that's a question I probably should answer.
Okay. Too spoilery.
Yeah, for the story. I think yeah, I think it'll be important for people to kind of put those pieces together as they play.
Sure.
Okay, sorry, you're gonna have to go into this blind. You can do it.
Sorry.
I believe in you. Brittany, I know we've missed a couple in here, but some of them are kind of the same.
They
We
are.
may have already answered them.
You guys are just so
already.
good at answering questions.
Somebody in the chat brought up Alyssa earlier, and I just want to like say she was one of my favorite characters from the first game. Do we see any classmates in Farewell? Probably not, right?
Classmates, no, I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay.
They're not at Blackwell yet, so
Because Blackwell is like a high school,
basically
right?
a high school at that point. Yeah.
See, I never
standard
know
high
because
school.
some people start high school like at 13 in some states or 14. I didn't start until I was 15. What
Oh,
time?
really?
When did you start high school?
14.
14.
14. Let's wrap up with this one from Owen Palmer. Did you have any idea of the impact this game would have when you were making it?
No, I actually didn't even know. In the first episode, I wasn't sure how much Chloe was going to be involved. I remember coming in and recording and not really realizing. And then I had some conversations with the guys from Don't Nod, and I was like, "Oh, she's the kind of the crux of the whole game." Ooh, whoa, no
pressure.
Yeah, but I knew I loved it. But it's one of those things where it's like the same thing with Aloy, where I was like, I love this character, and I have no idea how anyone else is going to feel about it.
Right, exactly.
You know, so you kind of are going in blind, and just putting your heart into it, and just hoping that
Yeah.
that other people are like, great. So I had no idea.
We were in a different position, obviously, because we had this game that now had made such a big impression. So many people out there cared so much about it that we just strived every day to live up to those expectations and to think about why it made an impact on us and what we could feed from that into our story.
I mean, this game has been so impactful to so many people. When we were at PAX West and we did our meetup for the launch of episode 1, just seeing the amount of people who came to share their love for this franchise and these characters and how excited they were for, this new journey with Before the Storm was something that we knew existed, and obviously you guys knew existed because there's like all these fan videos and letters and things online, but having those conversations with people and even some people in the chat talking about like what this means to different types of communities of gamers has been really awesome, and we've obviously talked about that on our show as well. So any final thoughts about episode 3 or Farewell before we sign off?
Oh boy, I just hope everybody loves it.
There's no stealth scenes, right?
No stealth scenes.
Okay, cool.
One of our
The whole,
rules.
it's all stealth. It's 100% stealth.
No, I think I'll say this. There's some interesting themes that really, I think, bubble up to the surface in episode 3 that will on one hand feel I think a little new, but if you look back into the previous episodes, our writers did an amazing job sort of working them into the earlier episodes. So take a look at that and think about those themes when you get finished with episode 3.
Okay. Well, Ashley, Chris, thank you so much for coming by
Thanks for
and
having us.
taking questions from everybody. We're super excited to play next week and to play Farewell, which has a release window sometime next year.
Early next year, and we'll be talking a lot more about it, I think, come the beginning of the year.
Awesome. Well, keep your eyes peeled. We'll, of course, bring you guys all of the latest information on the What's Good Games show. We have a new episode going live this Friday. Don't forget to subscribe on podcast services and check out our YouTube channel and our Twitch channel, which I believe you guys are on right now. Have a good day, everyone. We'll see you later.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Awkward.